The void shimmered, a tear in the fabric of space-time folding back upon itself, and the diplomatic vessel, the Stardust Drifter, emerged into the alien glow of the Caldrian system. Ambassador Elias Ward stood on the bridge, hands clasped behind his back, gazing at the swirling M-class star that bathed the primary planet, Caldria, in hues of ochre and deep violet. The world itself was a breathtaking tapestry of emerald continents, sapphire oceans, and intricate, silver lines that hinted at advanced civilization, structures woven into the very landscape like metallic veins. He felt the familiar thrum of the ship settling into orbit, a low vibration that ran through the deck plating and up his legs. His mission was straightforward, or so he had been told. Establish contact, negotiate terms for resource sharing, secure an alliance. Earth needed Caldria's unique energy crystals, the keystones to the next generation of interstellar travel. And Caldria, apparently, needed something Earth could offer, though his briefing had been frustratingly vague on that point. Just secure the alliance, they said. High Command had stressed the importance, the urgency. Failure was not an option. His liaison officer, Commander Eva Rostova, approached, her boots clicking softly on the polished floor. Ambassador, we have received docking clearance and transmission protocols from Caldrian Command. They await your arrival at the primary Spire's citadel. Elias nodded, smoothing the front of his deep blue diplomatic uniform, the Terran Confederacy emblem gleaming on his chest. Excellent, Commander. Prepare the shuttle. Did the final cultural briefing packet offer any more clarity on their political structure? The initial data was sparse. Rostova hesitated, tapping a command into her datapad. Sir, the updates are still minimal. 3 major royal houses Xylos, Thermidor, and Eridor seem to hold sway, ostensibly unified under a ministerial council. But the power dynamics are complex, rooted in ancient traditions. The council insists all negotiations must follow established protocols. They mention something called a welcoming ceremony, involving a demonstration of mutual respect. Standard fare, likely. Mutual respect, Elias murmured, looking back at the planet. Let's hope it translates well. Ensure the gift casket is prepared. We need to make a good first impression. He felt a prickle of unease, a familiar sensation honed by years navigating treacherous diplomatic waters across the galaxy. The lack of solid intelligence was unusual for a mission of this magnitude. It felt like walking into a room with the lights off. The shuttle descent was smooth, cutting through Caldria's surprisingly dense atmosphere. Below, the landscape resolved into stunning detail. Crystalline structures soared towards the sky, catching the dual sunlight in dazzling displays. Flying vehicles, sleek and silent, navigated intricate aerial pathways between the spires. The Spire Citadel itself was a monumental structure, a fusion of organic curves and sharp, technological edges, piercing the clouds like a colossal spearhead. As they landed on a vast, open platform high atop the Citadel, a delegation awaited them. Caldrians were tall, slender beings, their skin possessing a subtle, pearlescent sheen that shifted color with their movements and, Elias suspected, their emotions. They wore flowing robes of intricate, self-illuminating patterns. At their head stood a figure slightly taller than the others, his robes a deep, resonant crimson. His features were sharp, almost avian, and his eyes, large and dark, seemed to hold an ancient wisdom, or perhaps an ancient weariness. Ambassador Elias Ward of the Terran Confederacy, the lead Caldrian announced, his voice a low, melodic hum that vibrated in the air. I am Minister Vorlag, speaker for the council. Welcome to Caldria. We trust your journey was without incident. Minister Vorlag, Elias replied, offering a slight bow, the standard Terran gesture of respect. Thank you for your welcome. Our journey was smooth, and we are honored to be here. We bring greetings from Earth and hope for a prosperous future between our worlds. Vorlog inclined his head. Prosperity is built upon understanding and respect. Ambassador, as is tradition, we shall begin with a ceremonial demonstration, atrial of worth, as our ancestors called it. A symbolic gesture, of course, to affirm the strength and spirit of our potential allies. Elias exchanged a quick glance with Rostova. Symbolic, that matched her briefing. Of course, Minister. We are prepared to observe any traditions you deem appropriate. How does this trial proceed? Vorlog gestured towards a massive archway leading off the platform. It is simple, a contest of skill and resolve. Your participation, as Earth's representative, would be seen as a profound gesture of goodwill. We have selected one of our own champions to partake. It is merely a formality, a dance of intent. Elias felt a flicker of suspicion. Participate. His role was negotiation, not symbolic combat. Minister, while I appreciate the sentiment, perhaps one of my security personnel would be a more fitting participant for a demonstration of physical prowess. Vorlag's expression remained serene, but his eyes seemed to harden almost imperceptibly. Ambassador, the trial is not merely physical. It speaks to leadership, decisiveness, the willingness to stand forth. For you to accept the challenge resonates far more deeply than delegating it. It shows Earth's commitment is embodied in its chosen envoy. It is symbolic. Rest assured, no true harm will occur. Our champion understands the nature of the ceremony. Elias hesitated. Refusing could be seen as an insult, jeopardizing the mission before it even began. High Command's directive echoed in his mind. Secure the alliance. His training. Years spent not just in diplomacy, but also in CQC and strategic combat simulations, a necessity for envoys in unstable sectors made him capable. But this felt wrong. Symbolic, he repeated, testing the word. Entirely, Vorlog affirmed, his tone smooth as polished obsidian, a display for the assembled delegates and the royal houses, who observe via transmission. Your willingness will be noted. Rostova gave a slight, almost imperceptible shake of her head, a warning he registered, but couldn't act upon without causing an incident. Trapped, he had to play along. Very well, Minister Vorlag. If my participation demonstrates Earth's earnest intent, then I accept this symbolic trial. A ripple seemed to pass through the assembled Cauldrians. Vorlog offered a thin smile. Excellent. Ambassador, your commitment honors us. Please, follow me. Preparations are already underway. They were led through opulent corridors, the walls themselves seeming to hum with latent energy. The air grew warmer, charged with anticipation. They entered a vast, circular arena, open to the violet sky above. Tiers packed with Cauldrian onlookers rose on all sides, their shifting skin colors creating a mesmerizing, kaleidoscopic effect. The low murmur of the crowd was a palpable entity. In the center of the arena floor, patterns glowed softly. Waiting there was a Cauldrian warrior clad in segmented, dark armor that seemed to drink the light. He was larger than the other Cauldrians, powerfully built, and held a long, wicked-looking energy glaive that crackled faintly. This did not feel symbolic. Your opponent is Kalen, champion of the Citadel Guard, Vorlog announced, his voice amplified, echoing through the arena. He understands the ritual's nature. Disarm. Do not injure. Show us the spirit of Earth, Ambassador. Elias shed his formal uniform jacket, revealing the standard-issue black undersuit designed for flexibility and minor impact absorption. He had no weapon, no armor. He looked at Kalen, whose stance was anything but ceremonial. The champion's eyes, narrowed and focused, held no hint of symbolic play acting. They held lethal intent. "Minister," Elias said quietly, turning to Vorlag, "are you certain this is purely symbolic? My opponent seems prepared for more." Vorlag placed a hand briefly on Elias's shoulder. The touch was surprisingly cold. "Appearances can be deceiving. Ambassador, maintain focus. Show resolve. It is all that is required." He then stepped back, joining the other officials on a raised dais. The low hum of the crowd intensified. A gong sounded, deep and resonant, vibrating through Elias's bones. Kalen immediately lunged, the energy glaive swinging in a vicious arc aimed at Elias's head. There was nothing symbolic about the speed or the power behind the attack. Elias reacted purely on instinct, years of training kicking in. He dropped low, the crackling blade shearing the air where his head had been. He pivoted on his heel, using Kalen's momentum against him, and delivered a sharp, driving kick to the back of the Cauldrian's knee. Kalen stumbled, surprised by the Terran's speed and unconventional move. He recovered quickly, spinning. The glaive now aimed in a low sweep meant to cut Elias's legs out from under him. Elias jumped, tucking his legs, landing lightly, and immediately closed the distance. "Disarm," Vorlag had said. His only chance was to get inside the weapon's effective range. He dodged another whistling swing, the heat of the energy blade momentarily warming his cheek. The crowd roared, a wave of sound washing over him. He saw Kalen's eyes widen slightly, perhaps not expecting such agility from an off-worlder in diplomatic attire. Elias feinted left, then darted right, catching Kalen's weapon arm just below the elbow with a precise nerve strike. The champion grunted, his grip faltering for a fraction of a second. It was enough. Elias hooked his foot behind Kalen's ankle, drove his shoulder into the Cauldrian's chest, and twisted. Kalen went down hard, the armored plates clanging against the arena floor. The energy glaive skittered away, deactivating as it left his grasp. Elias stood over him, breathing heavily, fists clenched. He hadn't intended to be so forceful, but the attack had been undeniably real. He looked up at Vorlag, expecting clarification, perhaps an apology for the misunderstanding. Instead, a profound silence fell over the arena. The vibrant colors on the onlooker's skin seemed to dim, shifting to muted grays and blues. Then, a single voice from the dais, amplified, cut through the quiet. It wasn't Vorlag, it was a different minister, his voice sharp with disbelief. He has defeated the champion. By the Sentinels, he has won the trial. Won. Elias frowned. Won what? This was supposed to be symbolic. Vorlag stepped forward, his earlier composure replaced by a complex mask of shock and calculation. Indeed, Ambassador Elias Ward of Earth has demonstrated remarkable spirit and resolve. He has unexpectedly, yet decisively, fulfilled the conditions of the ancient trial of worth. He paused, his gaze sweeping over the stunned crowd, then landing back on Elias. And according to the oldest laws, bound by the Triune Covenant, he has thereby earned the right to court the designated royal heirs. Elias felt his blood run cold. Court, minister, I think there's been a grave misunderstanding. I was told this was symbolic of commitment. Ambassador, Vorlag countered smoothly, regaining his poise. Your victory, however unforeseen, confirms that commitment in the eyes of our people and our oldest traditions that dictate the victor of such a trial, when enacted under these specific celestial alignments, proves his worthiness to seek union with the royal houses. He gestured dramatically towards 3 specific sections of the stands, where holographic shields momentarily shimmered, revealing 3 figures seated in positions of honor. By winning the trial, Vorlag declared, his voice booming across the now buzzing arena, you, Ambassador Elias Ward, have secured the unprecedented honor of engagement to Princess Lireya of House Xylos, Princess Zhenya of House Thermidor, and Princess Maelith of House Eridor. 3 engagements, 3 princesses, from rival houses. Elias stared, speechless, as the implications crashed down upon him. This wasn't a diplomatic mission anymore. He had stumbled into something far older, far more complex, and potentially far more dangerous. He hadn't just secured a potential alliance. He had accidentally bound himself, and by extension, Earth, to the very heart of Caldria's power structure, and perhaps to its deepest secrets. The resource negotiations suddenly seemed like the least of his problems. He was engaged to 3 alien princesses, and judging by the calculating look in Vorlag's eyes and the stunned silence from the royal boxes, nobody, least of all him, had expected this. He felt less like an ambassador and more like a pawn, suddenly thrust into the center of a game whose rules he didn't understand. The days following the atrial were a whirlwind of bewildering protocol and thinly veiled political maneuvering. Elias was moved from the modest diplomatic quarters assigned to his team to a lavish suite within the spire. Citadel, a place of unsettling beauty and oppressive silence. Rostova and his security detail were politely but firmly isolated, restricted to their initial accommodations under the guise of allowing the ambassador space to acclimatize to his new status. He was effectively alone, surrounded by attendants who moved like ghosts, their pearlescent skin shifting in unreadable patterns. His attempts to contact Earth were met with frustrating technical delays, transmissions garbled or simply failing to connect. He suspected deliberate interference. His official engagements were announced formally by the Ministerial Council, an event broadcast across Caldria. The news was met with a mixture of shock, confusion, and, in some quarters, religious fervor. Ancient prophecies were dredged up, texts speaking of an off-worlder uniting the houses in a time of celestial convergence. Elias found the attention suffocating. He was paraded through ornate halls, presented at formal gatherings, always flanked by ministers who spoke for him, interpreting his bewildered silence as dignified contemplation. His first formal meetings with the princesses were conducted separately, each within the designated wing of the citadel representing their royal house. The contrasts were stark. Princess Lireya of House Xylos received him in a chamber that felt like the heart of a glacier. Crystalline structures pulsed with a soft, cold blue light, and the air was chilled. Lireya herself was statuesque, her features sharp and aristocratic, her skin shimmering with pale blues and silvers. Her eyes, the color of ice, regarded him with undisguised frostiness. She sat upon a throne carved from a single, massive crystal, her posture radiating regal disdain. "Ambassador Ward," she began, her voice crisp and cool, devoid of warmth, "you find yourself in a position of unexpected significance. My house, Xylos. Controls the flow regulators for the deep core energy conduits. Our stability is paramount to Caldria's survival. This archaic ritual you stumbled into has complicated matters greatly." Elias inclined his head, deciding directness was his only recourse. "Princess Lireya, I assure you, my participation was under the explicit understanding that the trial was symbolic. I had no intention of disrupting your traditions or political structures. My mission is alliance, not entanglement." Lireya's lip curled slightly. "Intentions are irrelevant in the face of consequence. Ambassador." The ritual was invoked, the conditions met. Whether by accident or design, you are now bound by the covenant. Do not mistake this engagement for affection. It is a political, and, perhaps, her gaze flickered with something unreadable, a necessary burden. House Xylos expects you to comprehend the gravity of the forces you have disturbed. There was no offer of refreshment, no pleasantries. The audience was clearly over. She dismissed him with a subtle wave of her hand, turning her attention to a complex holographic display depicting energy flow charts. His meeting with Princess Zhenya of House Thermidor was the antithesis of the first. Her wing of the citadel pulsed with warmth, decorated in fiery reds and molten golds. Geothermal vents released fragrant steam into the air, and the walls seemed alive with shifting, heat haze patterns. Zhenya was vibrant, her movements quick and energetic, her skin glowing with shades of orange and crimson. Her eyes, bright and intense, assessed him with open curiosity and a spark of defiance. She paced before a bubbling pool of luminescent lava, contained safely behind a force field. "So," she said, stopping abruptly and turning to face him, a challenging grin on her lips. The accidental conqueror, the off-worlder who tripped and fell into the lap of prophecy, or perhaps Minister Vorlog's lapdog. Elias bristled slightly at the implication. "Princess Zhenya, my actions were my own, based on misinformation. I serve no master here but the interests of peace and cooperation between Earth and Caldria." Zhenya laughed, a sound like crackling flames. "Peace, cooperation, ambassador. My house, Thermidor, governs the geothermal core taps, the very heart of Caldria's power. We understand pressure, heat, the forces that can either forge or shatter. This engagement is a power play. Make no mistake. The ministers use tradition like a shield, but ambition burns beneath. You are a tool, ambassador. The question is, whose tool will you choose to be, or will you break the mold entirely?" She leaned closer, her intense gaze searching his. House Thermidor values strength, action. Passivity is weakness. Remember that. Unlike Lireya, Zhenya seemed almost amused by the situation, viewing it as a challenge, a disruption to the status quo she might exploit. Finally, he met Princess Maelith of House Eridor. Her domain was ethereal, filled with soft, shifting lights, holographic projections of constellations, and the gentle sound of synthesized wind chimes. The air smelled of ozone and strange, alien flora. Maelith herself was elusive, draped in flowing robes of deep violet and indigo that seemed to blend with the shadows. Her features were softer than the others, her skin shimmering with subtle greens and purples. Her eyes were large and dark, holding a depth that felt ancient and unnerving. She observed him from behind a screen of softly falling light particles. "Ambassador Ward," her voice was a low murmur, like distant whispers on the wind. "You are the anomaly, the unexpected variable in an equation centuries old. House Eridor stewards the atmospheric processors and the orbital energy relays. We deal in currents, unseen forces, balance. Your arrival, your victory, it has sent ripples through the very fabric of our world's harmony." "Princess Maelith," Elias began, feeling strangely off balance in her presence. "I seek only to understand. I was misled about the trial. This situation is not of my making." Maelith stepped forward, the light particles parting around her. "Perhaps not of your conscious making, ambassador. But forces are at play, currents converging. The Triune Sentinel stirs, its energy fluctuates erratically. The ministers speak of unity through you, through this ancient rite. But unity forced through sacrifice, is that truly harmony?" Her words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Sacrifice. The term sent a chill down his spine. House Eridor watches, listens. "We perceive the patterns others ignore. Be wary. Ambassador. The path laid before you may not lead where you expect. She offered no advice, no challenge, only cryptic warnings and an unnerving sense of foresight. Leaving Maelith's chambers, Elias felt more confused and isolated than ever. Three princesses. Three vastly different personalities and domains, each bound to him by an accident, each hinting at deeper dangers. Lireya's icy pragmatism focused on stability and control. Zhenya's fiery spirit saw opportunity and challenge in chaos. Maelith's mysterious pronouncements spoke of unseen forces and potential sacrifice, and hovering over it all was the Ministerial Council, led by the inscrutable Vorlag, orchestrating events from the shadows. He retreated to his suite, pacing the opulent cage. He had to find a way to communicate with Rostova, to access unbiased information. He examined the suite's communication console. It seemed functional, but every attempt to reach the Stardust Drifter or Rostova's comm signal met with static or rerouted loops. He began examining the room itself, running his hands along the walls, searching for hidden panels, surveillance devices, anything. His training included basic counter-surveillance and technical exploitation. Behind a decorative panel depicting a Caldrian celestial map, his fingers found a seam. Prying it open, he discovered a small, shielded data port, likely overlooked by whoever had prepared the suite. He didn't have his standard Terran interface tools, but he did have his diplomatic multi-tool, a device outwardly innocuous, but containing microcircuitry capable of basic data intrusion, working carefully, bypassing the obvious security protocols designed to trap casual snoops. He managed to establish a low-frequency, encrypted connection to the Citadel's internal network, not the public one, but the deeper maintenance and archival systems. He started searching, using keywords gleaned from his conversations: Trial of Worth, Triune Covenant, Triune Sentinel, Royal Heirs, Ambassador, and the designation of the previous Terran envoy who had visited Caldria decades ago and vanished without a trace, Ambassador Thorn. The system fought him, firewalls and data traps lurking like digital mines. But Thorn's disappearance had always bothered High Command, and Elias had memorized the case file. He used Thorn's diplomatic access codes, long deactivated on the primary networks, but potentially still holding residual privileges in the deep archives. It was a long shot. He hit a wall of encryption stronger than the rest. But then, a flicker. Thorn's code granted him access to a single, fragmented log file, heavily corrupted but partially readable. It wasn't an official report. It seemed to be a personal log, hastily recorded, misled, not symbolic. Kalen's predecessor, brutal. Sentinel demands, life energy, conduit. The union is not marriage, it's sacrifice. Council needs an offering, alignment window. They chose me, refused, must warn Earth, cannot let them send another. They won't let me leave. Vorlag. The log cut off abruptly. Sacrifice. Maelith's word echoed in the silent room. The Triune Sentinel. Life energy. Conduit. The previous ambassador, Thorn, had discovered the truth. Refused and vanished. Elias wasn't the first Terran envoy put in this position. He was the next offering. His accidental victory wasn't an accident at all. It was engineered. Kalen, the champion, must have been instructed to lose. But Elias's unexpected skill had made the fight look convincing. Perhaps too convincing. Cementing his fate in the eyes of the populace. The ministers hadn't just tricked him. They had potentially signed his death warrant. The alliance wasn't the goal. He was the resource Caldria needed. And the three princesses, were they complicit? Or victims themselves, bound by the same deadly tradition, the elaborate suite, the engagements, the isolation. It was all designed to keep him compliant, placated, until the time of the union. The sacrifice arrived. He finally understood the coldness in Lireya's eyes, the challenging glint in Zhenya's, the cryptic warnings from Maelith. They were likely as trapped as he was. He needed to reach them, to find out what they knew, before the alignment Maelith mentioned, before the Sentinel demanded its price. His mission had just shifted from diplomacy to survival. The revelation hit Elias like a physical blow. He sank onto a low couch, the luxurious fabric feeling cold and alien against his skin. Sacrifice. Conduit. The fragmented words from Ambassador Thorne's log painted a horrifying picture. He wasn't a diplomat caught in political crossfire. He was livestock being fattened for slaughter. The ministers, with Vorlag at their head, weren't negotiating in good faith. They were managing an asset, him, until the appointed time. The celestial alignment Maelith had mentioned suddenly took on ominous significance. When was it? How much time did he have? He forced himself to think clearly, suppressing the surge of fear and anger. Panic was a luxury he couldn't afford. Thorne had vanished after refusing. Refusal meant death or disappearance. Compliance meant sacrifice. Neither was an acceptable outcome. His only hope lay in disrupting the minister's plan, and that meant finding allies. The princesses. Were they aware of the true nature of the ritual? Lireya's coldness could be resignation. Zhenya's defiance, a desperate lashing out. Maelith's mystery, a cloak for hidden knowledge. He had to reach them, discreetly. His isolated suite was both a prison and a potential fortress. He intensified his search of the room, mapping every sensor he could detect, every potential listening device. He found several. Cleverly integrated into the decor, communication within the suite was impossible. Getting out unnoticed was the first hurdle. The attendants were ever present, silent sentinels. He needed a distraction, a reason to leave the suite under less controlled circumstances. He reactivated the hidden data port, delving back into the Citadel's network. This time, he didn't search for history. He searched for current schedules, security routines, architectural plans. It was slow, painstaking work, constantly skirting detection. He discovered the timing of guard patrols in his corridor, the shift changes of his attendants, and, crucially, the maintenance schedules for the environmental systems in his sector. There was a brief window during a routine atmospheric filter flush sequence in the adjacent sector, where localized sensor grids experienced momentary interference. It was only minutes long, but it might be enough. He needed to contact the princesses simultaneously, or at least leave messages they could retrieve securely. Using the network access, he carefully crafted 3 identical, heavily encrypted data packets. The message was simple, stripped of incriminating details, urgent, compromised position, shared danger, required discreet meeting, my suite, environmental maintenance cycle, Sector 7G tomorrow trust is essential. He embedded a single untraceable verification code drawn from a common element in their initial. Separate meetings, a specific reflection in Lireya's crystal throne, a particular burst of flame in Zhenya's lava pool, a unique chime sequence in Maelith's chamber, something only they would recognize as authentic. He routed the packets through layers of obfuscated relays, timing their delivery to coincide with moments he calculated they might be alone, or using private terminals within their respective house wings. It was a gamble. They could ignore it, report him, or worse, pretend to cooperate while alerting the ministers. The next 24 hours were agonizing. Elias maintained a facade of confused compliance, attending a meaningless reception where ministers lauded the impending union and spoke glowingly of the harmony it would bring. He watched Vorleg closely, searching for any sign that his probing had been detected. The minister remained impeccably composed, his smile never quite reaching his ancient eyes. Elias forced himself to eat the strange, delicately prepared Cauldrian food, to engage in stilted conversation, all while his mind raced, planning contingencies. As the appointed time approached, Elias prepared. He disabled the most obvious internal sensors in his suite, using carefully timed electromagnetic pulses from his multi-tool, a temporary measure, but hopefully sufficient. He positioned himself near the main door, listening intently. The Citadel's internal chronometer chimed, signaling the start of the maintenance cycle in the adjacent sector. A low hum resonated through the walls as the filters began their flush sequence. This was it. He waited. 1 minute passed. 2. Had the messages not reached them? Had they dismissed his warning? Had he misjudged them? Just as doubt began to creep in, a faint shimmer distorted the corridor light outside his door. Not a guard patrol. Something else. He activated the door release. Lireya stepped inside, her usual icy composure overlaid with a subtle tension. Her silver and blue robes seemed to absorb the suite's light rather than reflect it. Almost immediately after her, Zhenya entered, a whirlwind of barely suppressed energy, her crimson robes swirling around her. Her eyes darted around the room, assessing. Finally, Maelith glided in, a shadow detaching itself from the corridor's gloom, her violet robes whispering softly. She sealed the door behind her, engaging a complex, shimmering energy field that Elias hadn't seen before, likely a privacy measure unique to her house. 3 princesses, together in his suite. The air crackled with unspoken questions and centuries of ingrained rivalry, yet also, perhaps, a shared sense of peril. Your message spoke of shared danger, Ambassador, Lireya stated, her voice low and sharp. Explain yourself. This clandestine meeting is highly irregular and carries significant risk. Zhenya paced restlessly. Danger or opportunity? What game are the ministers playing now? And why drag us into it directly? Maelith remained near the door, her gaze distant, as if listening to something Elias couldn't hear. The currents shift rapidly, she murmured. The Sentinel grows restless. Your summons was timely, Ambassador. Elias took a deep breath. Princesses, I believe we have all been manipulated. The trial of worth, my victory, this engagement, it's a lie, a carefully constructed facade. He quickly recounted his discovery, Thorn's fragmented log, the words of sacrifice, conduit, life energy. He watched their faces closely for reactions. Lireya's expression hardened, but there was a flicker of recognition in her eyes, quickly masked. Sacrifice, that is, an archaic interpretation of the ancient texts. The Council assures us the ritual evolved, became symbolic. Symbolic, Zhenya scoffed, stopping her pacing. The power fluctuations from the Sentinel are real. The core taps are becoming unstable. My engineers report energy drains they can't explain. Symbolic gestures don't cause geological tremors. Lireya! Maelith stepped forward, her dark eyes locking onto Elias. Ambassador Thorn. He visited Cauldria when I was but a child. I remember the whispers. He questioned the ritual. He argued with the council. Then, he was gone. They said he chose to leave, insulted by our traditions. She paused, her voice barely audible. My house's sensitive instruments detected a massive, localized energy surge near the Sentinel chamber shortly after his departure. It was anomalous, consistent with a forced energy transfer. A heavy silence descended. Maelith's revelation confirmed Elias's fears. Thorn hadn't left. He had been consumed. Lireya looked shaken, her icy demeanor cracking slightly. If this is true, then the council, Vorlag, they intend for you, ambassador, to be the next sacrifice. And we, our engagement binds our houses to this act, makes us complicit. Worse, Zhenya spat, clenching her fists. It makes us the conduits through which his life energy, and perhaps ours, is channeled to the Sentinel. The union isn't symbolic, it's the mechanism of sacrifice. The Triune Sentinel requires balance, Maelith explained, her voice regaining some of its mystical calm. Though underpinned with urgency, it stabilizes Caldria's unique energy matrix, the very matrix that powers our world and generates the resources Earth desires. For centuries, it has required periodic harmonization, a resonant life force offered during specific celestial alignments to soothe its fluctuations. The Council clings to the old ways, fearing change, fearing the chaos if the Sentinel destabilizes completely. They believe sacrifice is the only way. There must be another way, Elias insisted. Sacrifice is barbaric. Thorn refused. We must refuse. Thorn refused and vanished. Lireya reminded him grimly. The Council controls the Citadel Guard, the communication networks, everything. We are royalty, yes, but within this Citadel. Their power is absolute, enforced by generations of tradition and fear. Then we don't refuse, Zhenya declared, her eyes blazing. We fight. We expose them. We find another way to stabilize the Sentinel before they force this union. The alignment Maelith spoke of, Elias asked urgently. When is it? Maelith closed her eyes briefly, as if consulting an internal calendar. The convergence is imminent. 3 planetary rotations, perhaps less. The energy fluctuations are accelerating. 3 days. They had less than 3 days to uncover an alternative to a centuries-old ritual, expose the powerful ministerial council, and escape a fortress designed to hold them. Thorn's log mentioned refusal. Elias mused. He knew he was targeted. He must have had a contingency, a plan to escape or warn someone. His quarters were sealed after his departure, Lireya said. Declared restricted archives. Access is forbidden, even to us. Forbidden means worth investigating. Zhenya countered immediately. If Thorn found something, some alternative, it might still be there. Getting into the restricted archives is difficult, Maelith cautioned. They are shielded, heavily guarded, psychically dampened. Difficult, not impossible, Elias stated, his mind already working through the strategic challenges. His CQC training was useful, but infiltration required different skills. Your houses control key Citadel systems. Lireya, energy conduits. Zhenya, core taps, which likely means thermal and seismic sensors. Maelith, atmospheric and orbital relays, suggesting advanced sensor and communication tech. Lireya nodded slowly, understanding dawning. We could create localized system failures. Blind spots in the surveillance grid. Zhenya grinned fiercely. Cause minor temperature spikes near sensor arrays. False alarms to draw guards away, Maelith added. I can mask our energy signatures, dampen psychic surveillance grids temporarily, but it requires concentration and proximity. Then we have a plan, Elias said, feeling a surge of adrenaline, of hope. We work together. Combine your knowledge of the Citadel and your house's control over its systems with my tactical skills. We infiltrate Thorn's quarters, find whatever he discovered, and use it to expose the Council and find another way to appease the Sentinel. He looked at the 3 princesses, representatives of rival powers, now united by a shared threat. Can we trust each other? Everything depends on it, Lireya met his gaze, her icy reserve replaced by steely determination. The Council's deception threatens my house as much as yours. Ambassador, Xylos values stability above all. Sacrifice offers only temporary balance, followed by decay. We need a permanent solution. You have my cooperation. Zhenya stepped forward, offering a firm nod. Thermidor bows to no one, especially not deceitful ministers hiding behind tradition. Let's burn their lies to the ground. I'm in. Maelith gave a slow, deliberate nod, her dark eyes holding a newfound clarity. The currents converge towards truth. Ambassador, Eridor will help navigate them. We stand with you. For the first time since arriving on Caldria, Elias didn't feel entirely alone. He had allies, powerful allies, bound by circumstance but united in purpose. The clock was ticking, the Sentinel stirred, and the ministers watched from the shadows. But now, they had a fighting chance. The escape from their gilded cages had begun. The plan coalesced rapidly in the confines of Elias's suite, fueled by desperation and a growing, fragile trust. They had to move quickly and precisely. The restricted archive section containing Ambassador Thorne's sealed quarters was deep within the Citadel's administrative core, an area bristling with security measures, energy barriers, pressure plates, sonic dampeners, and psychic wards, monitored constantly by the ministerial guard. The primary obstacle is the chronosynclastic lock on Thorne's main door, Lireya explained, accessing Citadel blueprints on a small, shielded datapad she had produced from her robes. It's keyed to specific temporal energy signatures active during his residency. Standard bypass codes won't work. Temporal signatures, Elias frowned. That's beyond standard encryption. House Xylos technology, Lireya confirmed, a hint of pride in her voice despite the circumstances. Designed to prevent unauthorized access across time, should temporal anomalies occur near the Citadel. However, she zoomed in on a schematic detail. There's a maintenance conduit running behind that sector wall. It carries residual temporal energy from the main clock system. If we can tap into it and modulate the energy flow precisely, my house's tools can handle energy modulation. Zhenya interjected eagerly. We work with plasma conduits far more volatile than temporal echoes. I can fabricate a micro-resonator to mimic the required signature, but I'll need access to a high-energy fabricator. There's one in the lower engineering bay, Lireya said. Heavily guarded. Leave the guards to me, Zhenya grinned. A simulated geothermal vent rupture in sub-level 4 should draw most patrols away from engineering. Chaos is an excellent diversion, while Zhenya creates her diversion and tool, Maelith added softly. Lireya, you can create a cascading power fluctuation originating from the deep core regulators. Make it look like a precursor to a system failure. This will mask the energy drain from tapping the temporal conduit and further confuse their monitoring systems. Elias nodded, coordinating the elements. All right, Phase 1. Diversions and tool fabrication. Zhenya, Lireya, you handle your respective systems. Maelith, can you use your abilities to mask their energy surges from direct ministerial scrutiny? Make it look like natural anomalies. Maelith closed her eyes. I can weave illusions into the energy grid. Yes, confuse the readings. But it requires intense focus, and I must be relatively close to the primary monitoring nexus. Okay, Phase 2. Infiltration. Once the diversions are active and Zhenya has the resonator, we regroup near the archive sector entrance. Maelith, you'll dampen local sensors and psychic wards as we approach. Lireya, you'll guide Zhenya in tapping the temporal conduit. I'll handle any physical security guards. Automated defenses we encounter. And Phase 3, Lireya asked, her gaze steady. "Find whatever thorn left behind," Elias said grimly, "and hope it gives us an alternative to becoming sacrifices." They synchronized their chronometers. The princesses dispersed as silently as they had arrived, melting back into the citadel's corridors, leaving Elias alone once more, the weight of the impending operation settling upon him. He checked his multi-tool, ensuring its charge was full. He had no weapons, only his wits and his training. The next cycle moved with nerve-wracking speed. Elias monitored the Citadel's internal network through his hidden port. He saw Lireya initiate subtle power drains, masked as diagnostic checks on the Xylos regulators. Then a series of escalating thermal alerts bloomed from sub-level 4, Zhenya's diversion. Emergency comm traffic spiked as guards were rerouted. Simultaneously, Maelith must have been working her illusions, as the primary security nexus feeds flickered with contradictory energy readings, causing confusion among the monitoring officers, judging by their confused chatter on the comms. Under the cover of this orchestrated chaos, Elias slipped out of his suite. He moved swiftly through service corridors and lesser-used passageways, his steps silent, hugging the shadows. He relied on the blueprints he'd memorized and Maelith's promised dampening effect to avoid detection. Twice, he encountered patrols moving towards Zhenya's diversion, flattening himself into alcoves until they passed. He reached the rendezvous point, a dimly lit junction near the archive sector, just as Zhenya arrived from another direction, flushed with success. She held up a small complex device glittering with microcircuitry. One temporal resonator, custom-tuned. Let's hope Lireya's math was right. Moments later, Lireya and Maelith joined them. Maelith looked pale, the effort of masking multiple energy surges clearly taxing. "The dampening field is active," she whispered, "but I cannot maintain it indefinitely. We must be quick." They approached the archive sector entrance. A heavy blast door barred their way, pulsing with faint energy. Standard magnetic locks and pressure sensors. Lireya identified. Elias used his multi-tool, bypassing the magnetic lock sequence, while Lireya used her datapad to send a temporary clear signal to the pressure sensors. The door hissed open. Inside, the corridor was eerily silent, bathed in a low red emergency light. "Psychic wards are strong here," Maelith warned, extending her hand slightly, weaving complex energy patterns in the air. The oppressive feeling lessened marginally. They located thorn-sealed quarters. The door was heavy plasteel, marked with faded Terran Confederacy insignia and newer, glowing Caldrian seals warning of restricted access. The chronosynclastic lock glowed ominously in its center. "All right, Zhenya," Lireya instructed, pointing to a panel beside the door. "Access the maintenance conduit here. Find the temporal feed. It should resonate at approximately 7.3 kilohertz." Zhenya knelt, deftly opening the panel and attaching her resonator. She worked quickly, adjusting dials, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Got the feed. It's unstable, trying to lock the phase." Sparks flew from the resonator. Suddenly, indicator lights flashed further down the corridor. "Automated defenses," Elias warned. "Turret deployment." Panels slid open in the ceiling, revealing compact energy turrets swiveling towards them. "Maelith, can you shield us?" Lireya urged, trying to help Zhenya stabilize the resonator. Trying. Wards interfere. Maelith strained, a thin shield of shimmering violet light flickering into existence around them. Just as the turrets opened fire, energy bolts splashed against the shield, causing it to buckle and spark. "Almost there!" Zhenya yelled over the din, signature matching, modulating amplitude. "Locked!" She slammed a final control on the resonator. The device hummed loudly, channeling energy into the chrono lock. The lock's ominous glow changed. shifting from red to green. "It worked!" Lireya exclaimed, hitting the door release. "Move!" Elias shouted, pushing them towards the opening door as Maelith's shield flickered violently under the sustained turret fire. They scrambled inside Thorn's quarters just as the shield collapsed. Elias slammed the door control. It hissed shut, cutting off the barrage. The heavy plasteel door held, but scorch marks already marred its surface. They were trapped inside, but safe for the moment. Thorn's quarters were preserved as if he'd just stepped out. A Terran datapad lay on a desk, beside a half-finished cup of synthesized coffee. Clothes were neatly folded on a bed, but an air of desperate haste overlay the tidiness. Papers were strewn across the floor near a wall panel that had been ripped open, revealing complex circuitry behind it. He was trying to bypass the communications block, Elias realized, recognizing the modified comm unit. Trying to send a warning. What else did he leave? Zhenya asked, scanning the room. Lireya was drawn to the desk, his datapad, standard Terran encryption, but maybe. She attached a universal interface cable from her own pad, trying to bypass. He used archaic Terran security protocols, primitive, but effective. She worked silently for a moment, then gasped. "I'm in." The datapad screen flickered to life, displaying Thorn's final, uncorrupted log entries. Log entry 74, confirmed. The Sentinel isn't just a stabilizer, it's sentient, or close to it. A vast crystalline consciousness. The sacrifice isn't just fuel, it's communion. A merging of life energy to temporarily soothe its existential pain, caused by the constant energy drain Caldria imposes on it. The Council knows this. They perpetuate the cycle out of fear. Log entry 75 found fragmented records in the deep archives. There was another way. Ancient Caldrians didn't sacrifice sentient life. They used resonance chambers, harmonizing their own collective psychic energy through specific conduits. Individuals trained as harmonizers to interface with the Sentinel peacefully. The practice was lost, deemed too difficult, too unpredictable. Sacrifice was easier, more controllable for those in power. Log entry 76 mapped the energy flows. The old resonance chamber must be beneath the main Sentinel spire. Access is likely hidden, sealed off centuries ago. Vorlag suspects I know too much. Security is tightening. I modified the comm unit, trying to send this data packet to Sector Command. If I don't make it. Log entry 77. They're coming for me. The alignment is closer than they admitted. Found schematics for the chamber. Entrance. Hidden behind the altar, in the abandoned shrine of First Light. If anyone finds this, harmony, not sacrifice, is the key. The Sentinel responds to unity, not pain. A neutral conduit, perhaps. Someone not bound by the old rivalries. The log ended there. Harmony, not sacrifice. A resonance chamber. A neutral conduit. Elias looked at the princesses. The answer wasn't escape. It was confronting the Sentinel, but in a different way. The Shrine of First Light, Maelith breathed. It's an old, disused temple near the Citadel's peak, close to the Sentinel spire, considered sacred, but largely ignored by the Council, a neutral conduit. Lireya murmured, looking directly at Elias. Someone not of Caldria. Someone unbound by the historical friction between our houses. You, Ambassador. Zhenya nodded, her usual fiery demeanor replaced by determined resolve. So that's the alternative. We don't run. We go to this resonance chamber. We attempt the harmonization Thorn wrote about, with Elias as the conduit, linking our energies. Can it work? Elias asked, the weight of the possibility settling on him. Communing with a giant crystal entity, harmonizing energies. The ancient texts of my house speak of psychic resonance, Maelith offered. Of minds touching, sharing intent. It is possible, theoretically, but dangerous. The combined energy, channeled through you. It could overwhelm you. It's better than being a sacrifice, Elias stated firmly. And better than letting Caldria tear itself apart when the Sentinel destabilizes completely. Which it will if this cycle continues. He looked at the door, hearing the faint sounds of guards attempting to override the lock from outside. We don't have much time. How do we get to the Shrine of First Light from here without alerting the entire Citadel? Lireya consulted her datapad again, cross-referencing Thorn's notes with Citadel schematics. There's a network of old service tunnels, mostly sealed off, running near this sector. One branch passes close to the shrine's foundations. It will be risky, possibly collapsed in sections, but it avoids the main corridors and guard patrols. Then that's our path, Elias declared. Zhenya, can you breach the wall into the tunnel? Lireya, guide us. Maelith, mask our passage as best you can. Let's go rewrite Caldria's oldest tradition. They were no longer just fugitives. They were agents of change, racing against time, tradition, and the impending awakening of a crystalline god, armed only with a dead man's last hope and their own fragile, newfound unity. Zhenya worked quickly, using a focused thermal lance from her toolkit, a device clearly not standard diplomatic issue, to cut through the reinforced wall where Lireya indicated the service tunnel lay. The air filled with the smell of ozone and molten play steel. Behind them, the pounding on Thorn's door intensified. Metallic screeches indicated the guards were resorting to heavy cutting tools. Almost through, Zhenya grunted, sweat beading on her brow despite the ambient chill, with a final, searing cut. A section of the wall slumped inward, revealing a dark, narrow opening choked with dust and disuse. Go! Go! Elias urged, helping Maelith through the opening first, her senses likely the most valuable in the darkness ahead. Lireya followed, her datapad casting a faint light. D, displaying the tunnel schematics. Zhenya scrambled through last, retrieving her lance just as the main door to Thorn's quarters burst inward with a crash of tortured metal. Elias pulled the severed wall section partially back into place, hoping to buy them a few precious seconds. The tunnel was cramped, ancient, and treacherous. Pipes coated in centuries of grime lined the walls, occasionally dripping unknown fluids. The floor was uneven, littered with debris. Maelith moved ahead, her hands outstretched, sensing structural weaknesses and potential hazards in the near-total darkness. Lireya consulted her datapad, guiding their direction, while Zhenya used her thermal lance sparingly to clear obstructions too large to navigate around. Elias brought up the rear, constantly listening for sounds of pursuit. These tunnels haven't been used since the Unification Wars, Lireya whispered, her voice tight. According to the archives, many sections were deliberately collapsed. Let's hope this branch wasn't one of them, Zhenya muttered, vaporizing a thick web of metallic fungus blocking their path. They moved for what felt like hours. The only sounds their own breathing, the drip of liquids, and the occasional scuttling of unseen things in the walls. Maelith guided them unerringly through branching junctions and around caved-in sections, her connection to the Citadel's subtle energies proving invaluable. Despite the physical exertion and the oppressive atmosphere, a sense of shared purpose kept them going. They exchanged low words of encouragement, shared nutrient paste rations Elias had in his pockets, and relied on each other's strengths. Lireya's knowledge, Zhenya's technical skill, Maelith's senses, Elias's tactical awareness. They meshed into an effective, albeit desperate, team. Suddenly, Maelith stopped, holding up a hand. Wait, energy fluctuations ahead, strong ones, and resonance. Familiar resonance. The shrine, Elias asked. Close. Maelith confirmed. Beneath it. I think we're near the resonance chamber access Thorn mentioned. They proceeded more cautiously. The tunnel began to slope upwards. Faint light filtered in from cracks in the ceiling. They reached a dead end, a solid wall of carved stone, different from the utilitarian plasteel of the tunnels. Intricate carvings covered its surface, depicting cauldrons with hands outstretched towards a multifaceted crystal, the Triune Sentinel. This is it, Lireya breathed, comparing the carvings to Thorn's schematics on her datapad. The Shrine of First Light is directly above us. Thorn's notes said the entrance was behind the altar. Then the chamber access must be here, in the foundation. Zhenya reasoned, running her hands over the stone. There must be a mechanism. Maelith placed her palm flat against the center of the carved wall. There is energy here, dormant, but present. It requires activation. A key. Thorn didn't mention a key, Elias said, scanning the area. Perhaps not a physical key, Maelith murmured, concentrating. A resonant key, an energy signature, like the chrono lock, but psychic. She looked at Lireya and Zhenya, our houses, Xylos, Thermidor, Eridor. Our energies are distinct, tied to the aspects of Cauldria we govern. What if the key is us, together? Lireya and Zhenya exchanged uncertain glances. Their houses had been rivals for millennia. Voluntarily merging their energies, even briefly, was unheard of. Potentially dangerous. We don't have another option, Elias stated quietly. The pounding on Thorn's door means the guards know we accessed his quarters. They know we have his logs. They'll be searching every possible escape route. And the Sentinel, can you feel it? Even Elias, lacking the princess's innate sensitivity, could sense it now, a low, pervasive hum vibrating through the stone beneath their feet. A feeling of immense pressure building, like the air before a storm. The Sentinel was growing more unstable. Lireya took a deep breath, then nodded curtly. Very well. How? Place your hands on the wall, beside mine, Maelith instructed. Focus on your house's core principle. Stability for Xylos, power for Thermidor, balance for Eridor. Do not try to merge yet. Just resonate. Let the stone feel our presence. Hesitantly, Lireya placed her hand on the stone, her expression tight with concentration. A faint blue light emanated from her palm. Zhenya slapped her hand onto the wall with characteristic gusto, a fiery orange glow pulsing beneath her touch. Maelith's hand already glowed with soft violet. The stone carvings began to glow faintly in response, tracing the ancient patterns. The low hum intensified. Now, Maelith whispered, her voice strained. Ambassador, you are the neutral conduit Thorn spoke of, not bound by our histories. Place your hands in the center, touching ours. Don't try to force anything. Just be open. Be the bridge. Elias hesitated for only a second. He placed his hands on the cold stone, bridging the space between the three princesses, his fingers brushing theirs. The moment he made contact, energy surged. It wasn't painful, but it was overwhelming. Lireya's cool, steady energy. Zhenya's fiery, dynamic power. Maelith's shifting, ethereal currents. They flowed into him, through him, meeting in a chaotic, dissonant clash. He felt the ancient rivalry, the suspicion, the pride of their houses warring within him. Focus, Maelith gasped, her own energy wavering. Find the harmony. Elias, unity, not conflict. That is the key. Elias gritted his teeth, concentrating past the overwhelming influx. He thought of their shared goal, their desperate alliance forged in Thorn's prison like quarters. He thought of the alternative, sacrifice, destruction. He pushed aside the conflicting energies, seeking not to suppress them, but to find a common frequency, a shared rhythm beneath the surface noise. He envisioned a bridge, not a battleground. He focused on the trust they had placed in each other, the courage it took for them to stand here together. Slowly, painstakingly, the chaotic energies within him began to coalesce. The harsh dissonance softened into complex harmony. The blue, orange, and violet light from the princess's hands intensified, flowing towards his, where they merged into a brilliant, pure white light that illuminated the entire tunnel. The stone wall groaned. The carvings blazed with white energy. Then, with a deep, resonant boom, the entire wall slid silently downwards, revealing a vast, dark chamber beyond. The air that flowed out felt ancient, charged with power, and carried the distinct, crystalline scent of the Sentinel itself. They had found it, the resonance chamber. They stepped inside, the stone door sealing silently behind them. The chamber was immense, circular, its walls covered in the same intricate carvings, all converging towards the center. In the middle of the room stood a raised platform, and upon it, 3 crystalline chairs arranged in a triangle around a central, slightly lower pedestal, clearly designed for the harmonizers and the conduit. High above, the ceiling opened into a shaft that seemed to ascend endlessly, presumably towards the main sentinel spire. The entire chamber pulsed with a latent energy. The deep hum they had felt earlier now, a palpable vibration in the air and stone. Incredible, Lireya breathed, her usual reserve replaced by awe. It matches the oldest Xylos records, texts considered mythical. The power in here, Zhenya murmured, looking around. It feels raw, untamed. Maelith moved towards the central platform. This is where the ancient harmonizers joined their consciousness with the Sentinel. Thorn was right. Harmony was the original path. She turned to them, her eyes seeming to glow faintly in the ambient light. The convergence is peaking. The Sentinel's distress is acute. We must attempt the harmonization now, before the ministers realize where we are, before the Sentinel destabilizes beyond recovery. Elias looked at the central pedestal, then at the 3 crystalline chairs. This was the culmination of their desperate gamble. He was to be the bridge, the focal point for an ancient ritual involving energies and consciousness he barely understood, to appease a crystalline god and save a world that had intended to sacrifice him. "Tell me what I need to do," Elias said, his voice steady despite the tremor of apprehension he felt. "Sit upon the central conduit pedestal." "Ambassador," Maelith instructed, gesturing. "Lireya, Zhenya, take the chairs corresponding to your house's traditional alignment. Xylos to the north, Thermidor to the southeast, Eridor to the southwest. Place your hands upon the activation crystals embedded in the armrests." They took their positions. The moment they sat, the chairs and the pedestal glowed faintly with their respective colors: blue, orange, violet, and a soft white from Elias's pedestal. "Now," Maelith continued, her voice taking on a trance-like quality, "we must open ourselves to the Sentinel, and to each other. Through Elias, Ambassador, you must be the anchor and the bridge. Receive our energies, our thoughts, our intentions. Unify them into a single, harmonious signal of peace and understanding. Project it upwards, towards the Sentinel. Show it we seek balance, not exploitation. Show it unity." Elias closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. He focused his mind, reaching out, tentatively at first. Then, with growing confidence, he felt the princess's mind touch his, Lireya's sharp, analytical focus, Zhenya's passionate, fiery determination, Maelith's deep, empathetic wisdom. He felt their fear, their hope, their resolve. He accepted it all, weaving it together with his own intention, peace, stability, a shared future. He gathered the combined psychic and emotional energy, shaping it, harmonizing it, smoothing the residual edges of rivalry into a unified chord of trust and shared purpose. Then, channeling all his will, he directed the flow upwards, along the path indicated by the chamber's design, towards the distant, suffering consciousness of the Triune Sentinel. The chamber flared with light. The vibration intensified, shaking the very foundations of the citadel. A beam of pure, white energy, shot through with threads of blue, orange, and violet, erupted from the central platform, surging up the shaft towards the Sentinel spire high above. Elias felt an immense, ancient consciousness touch his own. It was vast, crystalline, filled with a pain born of loneliness and exploitation, but also with a deep yearning for resonance, for harmony. He felt its surprise, then its cautious acceptance of the offered unity. He poured more energy into the connection, holding nothing back, projecting the shared hope and determination of the four of them, offering peace instead of demanding power. He felt the Sentinel respond, its agitated energy calming, smoothing, settling into a new, stable resonance. The threatening vibrations subsided. The oppressive pressure in the air eased. A profound sense of peace washed through the chamber, emanating downwards from the spire above. Then, the connection faded. The beam of light receded. Silence fell, broken only by their ragged breathing. Elias slumped forward on the pedestal, utterly drained, physically and mentally exhausted, but alive. It had worked. Lireya slowly lowered her hands from the crystals, looking stunned. The energy conduits, they're stabilizing, reading optimal flow across the network. Zhenya let out a shaky laugh, wiping her brow. The core taps, pressure is normalizing. Seismic activity ceased. Maelith opened her eyes, a serene smile gracing her lips. The Sentinel is calm, at peace. Harmony is restored. She looked at Elias with newfound respect. You did it, Ambassador. You were the bridge. Before they could fully comprehend their victory, heavy footsteps echoed from the tunnel entrance. The stone door slid open, revealing Minister Vorlag, flanked by a contingent of heavily armed Citadel guards. But Vorlag wasn't looking at them with anger. His expression was one of stunned disbelief, his gaze fixed on the softly glowing pedestal and chairs, then upwards towards the spire. He could undoubtedly feel the change in the Citadel's energy, the Sentinel's newfound calm. By the lost traditions, Vorlag whispered, stepping into the chamber alone, leaving the guards outside. He looked from the princesses to Elias, comprehension dawning in his ancient eyes. You performed the rite of harmonization. It wasn't a myth. The myths were history, Minister, Lireya stated, rising from her chair, her voice regaining its regal authority. History you and the council chose to bury beneath the convenient lie of necessary sacrifice. Convenient. Vorlag bristled, regaining some of his composure. Ambassador Thorn discovered this. Alternative. He demanded we abandon the traditions that have kept Caldria stable for centuries. He threatened to expose us, to shatter the fragile peace. We acted to preserve our world by murdering him and preparing to murder me, Elias countered, pushing himself upright, weary but resolute. Your stability was built on fear and deception. Thorn was right. The Sentinel doesn't desire sacrifice. It desires harmony. We just proved it. Zhenya stepped forward, fire back in her eyes. The council's reign of fear is over. Vorlag. The houses stand united, and the Sentinel is stable, thanks to cooperation, not coercion. Caldria deserves the truth. Maelith added softly. The currents have shifted. Minister. A new path is open. Vorlag looked trapped. The proof of their success resonated throughout the very structure of the citadel. The guards outside were murmuring, sensing the change, seeing the impossible reality of the resonance chamber. His authority, built on the necessity of the old ritual, was crumbling. What? What happens now? Vorlag asked, his voice betraying his uncertainty. Elias looked at the princesses, seeing their shared nod of agreement. Now, Elias declared, stepping forward to stand beside them, facing the minister. Now we build a real alliance between Earth and Caldria, between Xylos, Thermidor, and Eridor. An alliance based not on ritual sacrifice and hidden agendas, but on mutual respect, shared knowledge, and the harmony we just achieved. He offered his hand, not in threat, but in invitation. Caldria has its stability. Earth needs Caldria's unique resources. Let us trade, cooperate, learn from each other, as equals. Vorlag stared at Elias's outstretched hand, then at the three princesses standing united, then back towards his uncertain guards. The ancient traditions were broken, the lie exposed, but a new possibility, a path away from the cycle of fear and sacrifice, lay before him. After a long, heavy silence, Minister Vorlag slowly, reluctantly, reached out and clasped Elias Ward's hand. The future of Caldria and its relationship with Earth had irrevocably changed, born not of political maneuvering, but of accidental heroism and the rediscovery of true harmony. The aftermath of the harmonization rippled through Caldrian society, the revelation that the rite of sacrifice was a perversion of a peaceful tradition, coupled with the tangible stability of the Sentinel, achieved through Elias and the princess's actions, sent shockwaves through the populace and irrevocably weakened the ministerial council's authority. Vorlag, facing undeniable proof and the united front of the royal houses, had little choice but to publicly acknowledge the events in the resonance chamber. He framed it carefully, speaking of rediscovering lost heritage and embracing a new era of cooperation, conveniently omitting the council's decades of deception and the planned sacrifice of Elias. But the truth, whispered through the citadel and amplified by the princesses' influence within their houses, spread rapidly. Negotiations for the new alliance between Earth and Caldria began almost immediately, conducted not in the shadowed chambers of the council, but in the open, within the now reactivated resonance chamber itself. A symbol of the new era, Elias, no longer a potential sacrifice but hailed as the harmonizer bridge, represented Earth, while Lireya, Zhenya, and Maelith represented their respective houses, working together with a synergy that astonished onlookers accustomed to their historical rivalry. The remnants of the ministerial council, including a subdued Vorlag, acted merely as advisors, their power effectively transferred to this new coalition. The terms hammered out were revolutionary. Caldria agreed to share its energy crystal technology and resources, not as a desperate measure brokered by sacrifice, but as part of a balanced trade agreement. Earth offered advanced environmental remediation technologies to help heal parts of Caldria affected by centuries of imbalanced energy drain, shared medical knowledge, and access to Terran cultural and scientific databases. It was a partnership built on mutual benefit and transparency. Elias found his role shifting again. He was still an ambassador, but also something more. His connection with the princesses, forged in crisis and solidified during the harmonization, had evolved beyond a mere political alliance. With Lireya, there was a deep respect, an intellectual connection built on shared pragmatism and a desire for lasting stability. Their conversations were often about policy, strategy, and the intricate details of interstellar governance. Yet beneath the surface, a quiet understanding bloomed. With Zhenya, there was an energetic camaraderie, a shared appreciation for action and directness. They sparred verbally, challenging each other's assumptions, their interactions sparking with competitive energy that slowly transformed into mutual admiration and warmth. With Maelith, the connection remained profound, almost mystical. They spoke of energy currents, consciousness, the deeper meanings behind the Sentinel's peace, finding a shared language that transcended words, built on empathy and intuition. The engagement, born of a deceitful ritual, was formally dissolved. Yet, the bonds formed were undeniable. They were partners, allies, friends, and perhaps the seeds of something more complex and deeper were being sown. Nurtured by the shared experience of averting disaster and building a new future, Commander Rostova and the Stardust Drifter crew were finally released from their effective confinement. Briefed on the incredible turn of events, Rostova, initially furious at the danger Elias had been placed in, quickly recognized the monumental significance of the new alliance and the ambassador's unique role in achieving it. Communications with Earth were fully restored, and High Command, after receiving Elias's full, uncensored report, reacted with stunned disbelief, followed by overwhelming relief and commendation. The threat of losing their vital ambassador had been replaced by the promise of an unprecedented interspecies partnership. The culmination of these events was a formal ceremony, held not in the somber arena of the Entrial, but on the grand observation deck of the Spire Citadel, overlooking the now thriving planet. Bathed in the gentle light of its sun, representatives from Earth, including high-ranking officials who had traveled light years for the occasion, stood alongside Caldrian delegates from all three houses and the Reformed Council. Elias Ward stood at the center, flanked by Lireya, Zhenya, and Maelith. They wore ceremonial robes that blended Terran and Caldrian aesthetics, symbolizing the union of their worlds. Before the assembled dignitaries, they signed the Caldrian-Terran Treaty of Harmonious Alliance, a document outlining principles of cooperation, shared knowledge, and mutual defense. Vorlag, speaking now with genuine humility, addressed the assembly. Today marks not an end, but a beginning. We shed the burdens of fear and deception that bound us to a painful past. Through the courage of Ambassador Ward and the wisdom and unity of Princesses Lireya, Zhenya, and Maelith, we have rediscovered the path of harmony. May this alliance, born of crisis but forged in trust, light the way to a brighter future for both Caldria and Earth. After the formal signing, Elias stood with the princesses, looking out at the stars. The weight of his unexpected journey settled upon him, not as a burden, but as a profound sense of accomplishment and connection. It seems accidental engagement led to intentional alliance, Zhenya remarked, a genuine smile lighting up her face. A logical, if unforeseen, outcome, Lireya added, the corners of her lips turning upward slightly. Stability achieved through cooperation is far more resilient. The currents guided us here, Maelith said softly, her gaze serene. To a place of balance, Elias smiled, feeling a deep sense of belonging he hadn't expected to find so far from home. It wasn't quite the mission I planned for. Perhaps, Lireya mused, it was the mission that was needed. And maybe, Zhenya added, nudging him playfully, a little less boring than just negotiating crystal prices. Maelith simply inclined her head, a silent acknowledgement of the complex, unexpected, yet ultimately positive destiny they had woven together. The future stretched before them, bright with possibility. The alliance was secure, Caldria was safe, and Earth had a powerful new partner among the stars, Elias Ward, the ambassador who had accidentally won a combat ritual and found himself engaged to 3 alien princesses, had not only survived, but had become the catalyst for profound change, forging bonds of friendship, respect, and perhaps even love, ensuring a truly happy ending born from the heart of danger, sealed in unity, and promising a future where harmony reigned over sacrifice. He looked at the 3 remarkable women beside him, leaders of their people, partners in peace, and knew that while his diplomatic mission was technically over, his journey with Caldria, and with them, was just beginning.